public comments. Do we have anyone sign up for public comments? All right, please come on.
Just want to make sure he wants to see. Good evening. Laurie Bailey, 1057 Nicholas Drive. I wanted to speak to you tonight about regarding the process for the land use plan map and land use text process. So thank you for taking a look at this after the last incident that we had, or situation that we had. We didn't have a well-defined process. I think we all struggled with exactly what was next and who was doing what. So I really appreciate you guys looking at this and reading the notes. Really do want to emphasize, you know, from the perspective of we look at the planning board to be that view of what is best and what fits and doesn't fit within it. And in that last situation where changes were made during the process and you didn't have the opportunity to come back, just reinforce that I hope that is part of the process. But at the same time, we got to balance making the process too long, because the last one, it went on for so many months, and I do think that's frustrating for everyone involved. And so how can we quicken the process but work within those time limits of the various meetings and everything else? And it may be something that we'll have to get creative on, but I do think that that will help us a lot when we have a defined process, and especially if they're similar, as was suggested, to the other zoning changes, just to make it easy to understand what's going on. When we think about looking at how to pull the pieces together to bring it back and have linkages between that land use. And I really appreciate the way Mr. Gauss listed out the recommendation of, you know, the focus for the future, the aspiration versus the tactical piece. And I think we lose sight of some of that sometimes. So by reviewing this process and looking at it, I do encourage you to think about those and bring that all in so that when we look at our future land use plan, the text, the land use plan map, and the zoning, everything associated with, we understand how they fit together. And we understand very clearly as citizens or developers or whoever the process required to make any of those changes, because at the bottom of all of it, it's all intended to be best for the village of Wesley Chapel in its entirety, and not just to line the pocketbooks of developers or just to satisfy a few residents. It's really holistically to be the best, and you can defend that when you have that comprehensive documentation and process well defined. So I just encourage you on that point. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comments? No? Okay. Next item on the agenda is addition, deletions, and approval of agenda. One thing I have is number 5, council member attendance. I think Brad was signed up to be here, Brad Cohen. I don't think he's here today. Mike. I'm sorry, Mike Cohen, sorry. But we do have Brad. So Brad has some things to talk about, including solar farms. And I think we could replace number 5, since we don't have Mr. Mike Cohen here. Brad for that. Okay. Do that. All right, any other additions or deletions of the agenda? Sorry. No? All right, can I get a motion?
Motion?
I'll second it.
Second it? All right, all fair? All right, thank you. Next agenda item is approval of minutes. Anyone have any discussion about the minutes? Can I get a motion to approve minutes? Mike? Second, thank you. All in favor? All right, and the next agenda item is Mayor Brad Corbett.
Guys, thanks for giving me a little bit of time tonight. As most of you probably are aware, I think Cheryl copied you on the email I sent out. We were taking off Senate Bill 802, which was the annexation bill. Kind of an interesting series of conversations, which I won't go through in great detail, but it was Wednesday morning. I basically was being told that he was redrafting the bill because it wasn't supposed to be 80 acres, it was supposed to be 48 acres or whatever. And I said, but you know we don't agree, de-annexation is not a zoning tool. And so, and he said, no, I understand that. Well, I'll make sure that the House knows, because that was the day before it went before the House. It had already gone through the Senate and passed 43-1, if I remember the vote. So, and then he called late afternoon and said, based on a series of emails, I want to thank everybody that, you know, I don't know who's here today and who's not, but I mean, those that weren't here, I know, sent emails and calls to our elected representatives. He also mentioned other legislators talking to him, as well as Representative Craig Horn. And it was essentially that he decided that he was going to remove Wesley Chapel from the bill and proceed with Mineral Springs. And if you remember, it was a Wesley Chapel bill, Mineral Springs got added in, the one parcel of 12 point something acres. And then now we're out, when the Mineral Springs is still in. And the House had their second vote today, I think. But regardless, I want to thank everybody who certainly helped. I think it's more than the elected officials. I think when they hear from the general public, it's a good thing. Which brings me to my second point. In a sense, it's dead, but it's tabled. And what I mean by tabled is we have been asked to do a couple of things, one of which is already in process, one of which was a new idea we hadn't even had a chance to work on. And by January, Senator Tucker has said that if we have not taken care of those things, that the bill may be reintroduced. I'm not worried about that at all. We are very close on conservation subdivisions. You all did a very nice job on it. We tweaked it a little because of seeing that we weren't getting the full yield. But other than that, you know, a few small tweaks here and there, but overall, the density will not be any more than it would be if it was R40 straight. So, and I think that was everybody's biggest concern, or most people, I won't say everybody, I don't like to generalize that much. And then the second one was, this whole bill started originally as a result of a request from a citizen to the property owner, not to us, but straight to Senator Tucker for a solar farm. And that was the first call I got, was basically said, I've got somebody who wants to put in a solar farm, what language do you have in your ordinances? I said, I'll get back to you tomorrow. Called Tim, we spent some time looking at it. We have essential services 1, 2, 3, and 4. Under essential services 3, which is more of the power generation type stuff, that's where it would fall, but that's not allowed in a residential. It's only allowed in commercial or office institutional and light industrial, I think. But I also at the same time reached out to Union County, because I know they've got the language already in, just to find out that they've already tweaked theirs since they had their first project down in Newtown, down the end of Newtown. So, but that was fine. Brian Matthews is there. He used to be the planner, but most of you probably know him in Stallings. And good conversation. So my ask of the planning board is, Tim will introduce the topic tonight, but you know, he doesn't really, other than a general synopsis of solar farms, what that means. But at the next meeting, he's going to have more information. I'm assuming he's going to pull language from the county. There's also a couple of towns around here that have already updated theirs. So we can take a look at it, see how we can, I use this term all the time, Wesley Chapelize it. It needs to fit us, and I think it can be. I think this is a pretty simple use. It doesn't generate traffic. It doesn't generate school density. And it's a win-win for the property owner because it's a lease in this instance. And, you know, either the length of the lease is going to be either 20 years or 40 years, but at the end of that period, if he goes that route, again, there's nothing in writing anywhere, that, you know, they'll remove the equipment and then it'll be subject to whatever the family wants next. So, that was really all I had. I know I answered a bunch of questions, what was last month, but if you guys have anything additional, I'd be more than happy to try and.
Could you, if you do the solar, if you do that, can you leave zoning R40 and put that on there so that in 20 years when they pull it, it goes back to residential?
I believe you can. What the county actually did, when they tweaked theirs, it's only allowable in what they call RA 2000 or something like 200. Well, basically it means 200,000 square feet, 5 acres basically, minimum size property. So with buffers and things along those lines, but I think you can. If you do it R40, it could be allowed on a smaller piece that maybe you don't want. So I'm not going to try and write the, that's between Tim and you guys, and we'll see where it goes. But you know, I don't think we should change. Certainly not go less than R40. Let me put it that way. That's my opinion. So, Deb.
So there is no specific ordinance R40, R20, business, light business industry that they come from in the county that these solar farms are under? Is it just, I mean, what zoning ordinance does it come under, do you know? Do you know?
Where in their ordinances?
Did they create a new one, or is it, do you know what it's listed under? Is it business, is it residential?
No, I think it would be similar to the essential services that we already have. It's just adding that additional use and then perhaps clarifying what type of property. Back to Chuck's comment.
I'd like to address the problem that we have here in Wesley Chapel. Is that the first time someone wished to de-annex, or property owner wished to de-annex, they went that we didn't have high-density housing or senior housing, or we weren't accepted to their needs as the property owner. And then they went right, once again, to de-annexation. They always go to, for our town, village, we always go right to someone for de-annexation. So in this case, an individual property owner who bought it for an investment, that's fine. They didn't even approach us or even ask. They just went to someone and said, I wish to de-annex. And then my problem here is in a short period of time, they would like us to come up with something that we can live with as a community, and if not, they'll de-annex. And we can see the problems that we had down the road when we went for the quick fix for, what was the official title? Senior housing, right? And we didn't have all the steps in place, let it be the water or just the land use part of it. And now an individual, or a group of individuals, are going to say, now I'd like to have a solar farm. I know they exist in other places in the United States, and I've tried to read up as best I can. We don't know if there would be any sort of health effects, probably nil, I got that. But what about to the part of the glare, okay? The glare that comes back when you do it near a residential area. And I hope we all realize that one time when they put up those mirrored glasses in the city or different places in the United States, they caught cars on fire and melted the sides of houses and did all sorts of things because they didn't know any better, and then they corrected it. I would just like us not for the de-annexation part, if this is not moving along at the pace that they want it to be, say done in 3 months or 100 days, whatever it means, that they'll once again come after and de-annex. And if you looked at the project on Newtown Road, when that was the first solar farm in this area on a large scale, they went through a series of changes. There was nothing around there, right? That was a field owned by a gentleman, and he converted a farm field, agricultural field into that. Very few neighbors around here. Now you're putting this into which will become a high-density area, population, that part of Cupperson Road. There's value there that people want in. I don't want us to rush. You understand? I don't want us to rush because someone, once again, is holding the sword or the axe over our head to get something done because they want it done. And my part as a planning board is, no one ever came to anybody, right? There wasn't even a rumor or a whisper or, hey, do you think I could get this in there? They just went to someone and wanted to do it. I think that's our frustration. Once again, the only way they come and deal with us is, they go nuclear. They want to hit the nuclear button every time. And as someone who sits here and tries to work with people and understands the rules that we have to obey by, and I feel your pain because every time this is what they do, or the forces at power do. I hope I expressed myself well.
Very well.
You
Very
know,
well.
it's possible they just didn't know what the procedure was going to be, and they bought land within a city without realizing.
This wasn't an investment. This is a gentleman who farms the property. If a long time, I mean, it's no secret, it's past fire chief of Wesley Chapel for, I don't know,
20-some years.
27
Well,
years.
then you should know of our existence.
He does.
Well, he just doesn't like Wesley Chapel government.
There has been some issues, and we're working through them. I met with the gentleman, we met with him, we had a good conversation, and he, of course, thought the bill was gonna go through, and I said, well, you know, I don't know one way or the other, and that was last Tuesday. I said, irregardless, I said, you know, if it does not, for whatever reason, I would like the ability to work with you and get this done. I think it's fair. I think I think this is a lot simpler than senior housing, for instance. That was a complex matter. It's a lot simpler than conservation subdivisions. And we have an opportunity to learn from those that have done it, as you've already started to do. So I get it, but on the same token, you know, if we put in, maybe it has to be conditional zoning. I don't know. And where we have an opportunity to look at it, and if there's something about it because this particular, you know, company does it different than that particular company, which is what happens with developers, then we have an opportunity to, you know, weigh in on it and have a reasonable request for modification. Maybe that's the way to go. I don't know. I don't want to write it. I don't want to. But your point's well taken. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't like it. I have never liked that happening, and it happened the first time. We were not approached. So, and then when we approached them and they came and sat here, they basically told us, we don't want to work with you. So, and there's some history there, and you know, some things we get blamed for as a town that have nothing to do with us. It happened in this instance, where they were talking about curb cuts in the 7-home subdivision that was built between the two Champion Forest entrances there. We told them they couldn't have two, you know, we were accused of telling them they couldn't have 2 entrances. That's not our call, that's NCDOT's. And they said, no, they only allowed them to have 1, primarily, I'm sure, for the, you know, the traffic and whatever. Again, he stated that he had once a developer came down, he didn't say exactly when, but he was told he needed to have two entrances. And he's got a narrow road frontage, relatively narrow. And, you know, again, called Tim and Cheryl, and we looked up in the book, and no, it's never been that way. It changed in 2011, but it wasn't never that at that detail level. And now it actually says 150 homes or more that you need to. 43 acre parcel of property, you're not going to get 150 homes. So, not sure what happened or when. I know sometimes if a developer doesn't like a particular thing or made all the pledges in the world, that I'm not throwing all developers under the bus. So I've worked with many that are very good, but on the other hand, maybe they thought they were going to be able to get us to put in denser zoning, and we wouldn't give them denser zoning, so they went back and told them something that was not even, I don't know. I don't know, it wasn't there. All I can say is that's.
My next question is, when I read that, do they even have a policy or plan in place for conservation zoning?
Mm-hmm.
If someone doesn't like it, and they go to the government and they say, well, now I wish to de-annex my land because I don't like this conservation zoning that you've done, right? That we have something in place, that we put something in place. Is this the tack that they're always going to use every time they want to talk to Wesley Chapel? Is there any in the town besides that? I know there was an ad on that 12 acres for Mineral Springs, and obviously I recall what they did to Marvin.
Yeah.
But on average, or normal in the past 5 years, this is just something that they.
Well, you remember Senator Tucker, he threatened a lot of mayors. It wasn't just Wesley
Weddington has been
Weddington,
threatened, Marvin has
Marvin,
been
because
threatened.
they all complained.
I'm trying to
That's
think of
what-
who else. There's actually a couple of them he
Yeah.
still has, that I understand he's still talking to. And to your other point, I don't think so. I think if we put in something that's reasonable, because even with the first age restricted housing, that development down Cuthbertson, They came in with their first plan after we passed it, and they wanted 6 homes per acre. And we said, that's not what the ordinance says. And we wouldn't budge. We didn't get any flack from that. Not even, not from them, not from the elected officials. Let me just say that. So I think if we make a good faith effort and we can defend it, which I think we can, because we've been using as the basis the same thing that, Weddington, Marvin, we've taken pieces of theirs, and Wesley Chapelized it. I keep using that phrase, but I mean, valid points, good questions. I'm not. Believe me, these are the things that constantly run through my head. And that kind of a nut.
This was before, the senior housing was before I was a planning board member, but as a citizen, basically, we were under the impression that the council caved because of threats of de-annexation, and I got from comments that I had heard, we don't have a choice, we've got to do this, this is the way it's going to be, sorry, this. So to me, that sends a signal, okay, you threaten with de-annexation, they're going to cave. I mean, that's the impression that I had, and I think it set a precedent that could haunt us.
Fair enough.
When technically,
What I'm getting hit with is when we pulled it. That's what I got hit with this time. We pulled senior housing. It's not on the books anymore. Okay, and it was approved, the removal, because we'd already approved three senior housing
Bam,
subdivisions.
bam, 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 they were just coming all at one time.
Right, so we said, all right, 8.4 square miles of Wesley Chapel, do we really 3? I mean, I think we're good. And I wasn't the one, it was the previous, again, still Wesley Chapel, but actually went to the elected officials and told them, and they said, I don't have a problem with it. You took care of what you said you were gonna do. What was the second comment after not having the solar farms? Is, well, you took the senior housing off the books, but you said we could. You're always going to be in what I like to refer to as a no-win situation. Okay, I'm going to try and meet people where they are within reason. That's what I like to do. Doesn't mean we're going to change Wesley Chapel zoning in great detail. Certainly, it's been really, really clear what the residents that have moved here for a reason. But I also recognize that a lot of these, especially the farmers, not necessarily the investors, but the farmers, their children don't want to farm anymore. Or ever did maybe, but I'm not going to go there. So that's their 401k. They sell it, and that's how they retire. So they're trying to get the best buck. We're trying to preserve the whole reason Wesley Chapel became Wesley Chapel, which is another argument I brought up repeatedly. We became Wesley Chapel because Indian Trail was trying to take us over. Maxwell was coming up from the south. So we just said, okay. Now when, I will say that when, again, realizing that we incorporated in 1998, so it's 20 years next month. But we didn't have our ordinances written probably till 2002, I think was the initial version, if I remember correctly. So there's 3 or 4 years there, they signed up without necessarily knowing, other than we didn't want to become those other entities. They can have whatever they want. I'm not picking on any entity, any other entities. I'm just saying we didn't want to be that.
my issue is when if the solar farm part comes through, when that provision is written into the town's ordinance, the planning board, are we gonna have a rush on solar farms, that there'll be a solar farm on every corner? You understand?
Yes.
What will deny someone from getting a solar farm in every corner on 5 acres or more?
Remember what happened with the senior housing? We had
Yes.
a lot of discussion about should we put in a criteria for how many we're gonna totally have. And for some reason that kept getting slapped down, so we never had a control.
Right.
And that's why in the end, after the
But then-
giant rush, we had to just like.
But then we'd have to address, and Tim, we'd have to have a master plan of this town. And we tried to stay away from doing that, but if every time somebody wants something that's not already on the land use plan, and they decide, well, now I want to build this on my property, right? I don't know, recycling center, just pick on that. Good, essential, I know we need them, But that's, the point I'm trying to get is, I don't like that somebody just decides, or a group of people just decide that, I don't have to listen to what you've already written down and planned, and you have on paper, that's not what I want, and if you don't do it for me, I'm just gonna take my ball and leave. I don't like that mentality.
Right.
So do we have to come up with a master plan of where we want things in this community, or while we still have it?
I think there's other ways to do it. I mean, I think the great points, and obviously they're gonna come up during your discussion, but like the county did, they made it 5 acres and over. All right, well, that cuts down on every corner at least, for the most part. But it doesn't necessarily eliminate the issue.
Okay, well, I'll just give you an example of the Moser project, I'll just give it a name. What was it they decide now that they want to come and make that a solar farm?
It's 2 acres.
What?
It's not 5 acres.
Well, that whole parcel's 32 or
But
23
he doesn't
acres.
own it all. He had written agreements from the property owners to negotiate on their
Okay.
behalf.
I understand that part of it, but it's still the land across the street from the school or whatever,
It could be.
where they'll just put solar farms. And then I know they'll have an idea of how to cut the land down so it's not on the motorist or.
Well, that's the berms, but again, that's up for the design of the plan. I also think they need to be near, somewhat near, and again, I'm not an expert in solar farms, so please don't take it for once it comes. But down Newtown, of course, they've got some of those monopoles running with the heavier duty power lines. Down less than, I might even run the back of his property, I don't know, to be honest.
You can do a lot of dual things with them too, to keep them even more agriculture. You can raise your solar panels a little bit higher, you can graze goats underneath them. I mean, you can make it more rural and shield it off, so it's quiet and it's
I know,
quiet.
my
I think
fear-
there's some good things about
Sorry.
it.
My fear was really more around tree savings, things like that.
Yeah.
But most of that land has already been cleared out for
Yeah.
agriculture, so, and it does have a unique topography, but, that's not gonna be something you can probably write into the bill, or the ordinance that makes sense. So, that's why I said let's chapelize it, let's be creative, let's learn from the mistakes, or I won't call them mistakes, the learnings that other groups have done, and see what we come up with.
But did anyone suggest, or people suggest that this should be done in a certain period of time? Like, I'd like to see it on paper in 6 months, or
Yeah.
they did, they gave us a due date.
Before January.
Before January this year.
And I don't see how should be that difficult for that particular type. We can still do our research, matter of fact, the original thought from a few people was 60 to 90 days, it can't be done that quick. So,
Before January, they want a plan in place or an ordinance in place for the solar farms.
yes.
And then they want a plan in place that they'll be able to start working, building, or making applications for conservation subdivisions.
Well, that we're
I know, we're working on it, but
a
that
month
was part of
away,
it.
we'll call for the public hearing in August in our July meeting, so I
But
think
they also asked for that too?
they asked for that 3 years ago. We got away with not giving it then, actually, to be quite honest. I mean, we were asked for senior housing and conservation subdivisions. We delivered one, and we were given a reprieve. And call it what you want. I mean, I get it. I went on television, got enough trouble back when I already stepped down about that one. So,
Well, I can definitely appreciate your position. I mean, I think functionally, right, the planning board, we're trying to do what's best for Wesley Chapel without the chess game with the state and the chess game with other, I think there's a lot of posturing, and I think we've seen the trend now of what you just said, right? It's almost every year or so, right, we're getting into something with the state, and everyone's keeping record of what, it's a chess game that you're having to play. So I think what sounds like you're gonna see from us is, this is what we think is best for Wesley Chapel. We don't like and appreciate the chess game that you have to play, but I think we should at least appreciate it. And
I don't like bringing it to you, to be honest with you.
Right.
I didn't like it 3 years ago, I don't like it now. I think I've been pretty clear about that, but, I'm also a realist.
How many acres is that solar farm down, was it Rocky River?
That's on Newtown Road.
Newtown Road, how many acres is that? It looks like
I don't know.
It's Frank Harris property, it's well over 100 acres.
You know, I looked at what the average was for reimbursement for leasing the land. I don't know what this one was. On the internet, it said the average is only like $500 a year per acre. You think about it, it's like, well, it was 100 acres. What are they getting? What's happening?
Well,
$1,000 a year
the number that's been thrown around here
So-
is $60,000 a year.
per acre, not per acre.
No, total for the
Total.
43,
Oh,
which is above that rate
right.
quite a bit, to be honest.
Sounds like
the math, but
We're talking about a minimum of 5 acres, but I would
We
like
could
to see a
make it
maximum.
bigger. We could make it, let you make a minimum of.
10,
40
money.
acres.
You can make it 50 acres.
I'm not building it.
I don't know
I'm
about
trying to
that.
stay away from.
Some of these industries won't
Right,
get it
that's-
unless it's like 100 acres.
Tim, you guys,
But I'm saying like, that they wouldn't even qualify for it unless they had a
correct.
fairly large
Right.
sized piece.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they won't come in and put one in for like 3 acres.
They
or 5. They won't even do it.
But
Yeah, there's an
you
expense
don't-
to that for them, so.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, the power companies,
Get something on- I could
the
get-
power companies are being asked to diversify their types of power.
Right.
Get away from the coal, get away from the, it's this, you know, it's constant tug of war. So what'll be 5 years from now? What'll be 10 years from now? I don't know. Like wind, if somebody came to me and said, we need to put up wind farms. Let's see, I'm trying to say it nicely. Hell no. You know, but there are other things. There's repeater towers that instead of having the big, tall, giant towers, they're actually putting things on phone poles now. And they're having smaller units that for cell service. We don't have that yet.
So let me say procedurally, I don't think we have any problem with this on our meeting next month.
Start talking about it.
Right, so, but however, in your council meeting here in a couple weeks, if you don't mind, bring it up to the whole council, get the buy-off from the whole council. We've been warned before, don't let one council person bring something to us, let the whole council know that
And-
we're working on something.
And basically, we had asked when we passed the resolution, again, opposing it on that Friday emergency meeting, the 4 council members that were able to make that, 3, myself, 4 total. We asked the question right then and there, is there anyone that would be opposed to us working on it? And the answer was no, let's do it.
Oh, good, okay, great.
So,
Well, secondly, also, if you guys can bring up for us at that meeting, and I'll do my best to be there, anything that you want to contribute to it, right? Any concerns, maybe there's some zones that you think it doesn't make sense, or maybe there's some sizes, or, what if it goes defunct and you got equipment laying there, 100 acres of equipment that's,
you
defunct.
require, like you do for a subdivision, you require a bond.
Right, so what I'm saying,
There's
what I'm
ways
saying is,
to tackle these things.
and what I'm saying is, any of those
Some.
concerns, any of those bullet points that you want to bring to us at the next council meeting, let me know so we can attack it with those, in an effort to try and get this done with your thoughts already in mind, with council's thoughts already in mind. Otherwise, we're gonna present it, and it's like, we didn't think of this or that. You're right. let's
I'll
go
ask the
back.
question, we're no experts on these either, by the way, so but, people I know, like Michael was just saying, he's done research. I started to do some research, as I said, I reached out to the county, and, I think property size is a perfect limiting factor that we could use, that's one. And, berms is another. I don't know if I'd go with the height on the units. If you're gonna put a berm up, you don't want them high. But, that's just me, but you guys write it and we'll look at it, but that would be the kind of thing I'd think about, to be honest.
And anybody else in council, I would love to jot those down so I can bring them to help
Sure.
contribute to our process.
Cheryl, if I forget, can you please put an agenda item specifically on asking council for any particular thoughts they might have on solar farms? No. Fair ask, absolutely.
All right, is there anything else? I mean, because I know we could go into the details, but I kind of want to keep this at 30,000 foot view.
Yeah, for now, so you have some more information in front of you.
And let's go to that next thing.
Just real quick, I appreciate you bringing this up. I think, for me, big picture is that when the town can proactively put the ordinance together, it's not only being responsive to what we're hearing from the senator, but it also helps us next time we have another issue where we can say we have taken that step to make ordinances that are more accommodating to property owners and more respectful of those rights. There is a real, we've talked about this in a couple of different issues, like the administrative subdivision, where the intent of the legislation was to make it easier for property owners to get stuff done through local government. And I think that's a common theme that we're getting, and there is a lot of feedback from private property owners to their legislators, not just for de-annexation, but for other things to take away the ability of local municipalities and local governments to do land use regulations, which are designed to maintain the image that we are trying to establish in local government. So I think that's from my perspective how regulations and can help in this, not just simply be more restrictive on the property owner, but can really help in the dialogue. The other thing, I put together some background information. I realized this was not on the agenda ahead of time, and so we're certainly not asking you, but if you have a chance before next meeting, this might be helpful. This is some information that Cheryl had come across. It's a template for a solar ordinance, and it has things like, different site, like rooftop installation versus small site, like less than 3 acres, and the larger site, how do you do that? And a lot of it is dealing with, buffering and keeping things out of view from surrounding property owners and the motoring public, if you will. So I'll just leave this with you for, if you'd like to have this for reference until next time.
Thank you.
It's good. Listen, I don't think we have anything.
There wasn't another topic that you were saying Brad talked about as the new planners?
Yes. Sorry. Got some to believe.
Thanks, I heard from Mike.
So typically, many of you, I think, may be aware, we're almost at the end of our fiscal year. At the end of June is our fiscal year. We start the new fiscal year. That's every town. That's nothing, the state's the same way, effective July 1st. So, as you know, Tim works for a company called InFocus, he's a contractor. InFocus has built us to work for them as well. So, as I think you're aware, I hope, we had agreed to, the council had agreed, that we were going to go for a full-time planner again, as we had years ago, be available 4 days a week, that normal process. And so I've been going back and forth with InFocus. They have essentially a position for Tim to go to, and again, most of those changes typically happen at the beginning of the fiscal year. We're still in the process of hiring. I think the close on the dates, Cheryl, of June 30th for applicants, and then we'll start interviewing. We'll have overlap with our planner at that point and the new person as long as we figure it out. But we had to tell InFocus what we wanted to do. So we said, let's do a 90-day extension. The rates changed slightly. And, it's like if you buy 3, you get a cheaper rate than if you buy 1, that kind of thing. So one of the things they said is because they have a position for Tim, can they give us an experienced planner, Shelley, I don't remember her last name.
Williamson.
Thank you. I met her today. She was here for her first day of beginning of trying to assimilate the things Tim has learned. It's kind of a sticky time in what we're doing, but she's very experienced, has quite a bit of background, and has worked for several towns, counties, trying to think of what else. I mean, she's got an impressive resume.
She worked
Also for COG. So she's going to start effective July, whatever that, she would work Mondays and Thursdays instead of Mondays and Wednesdays, as Tim was doing.
Next Monday, the 2nd.
Second, thank you. There is a transition. She's coming back again Wednesday, I guess, or Thursday this week.
Sure, her schedule will be Mondays and Thursdays.
Right.
And
But I mean for the extra training day for you.
yes. she'll be coming, actually be coming this Thursday with Susan on.
Okay. But Tim will also be on call. So, we have to be a little careful with it because there's, we can be charged if it's gonna be a long discussion, which I get. I mean, that's only fair as well. Can't tie up two plans, but I think Shelley will do a great job. I think she'll work together with you. She has a wealth of knowledge on things already. I've seen, an hour meeting with her today. I didn't really want to do it at this point, but I'm also trying to be cognizant of many things as I said. So Tim, this will be, well, no, it won't be. Yes, it will be, sorry. This will be Tim's last planning board meeting. Shelley can't make our July council meeting, so Tim will be here for that, so. Hopefully. He's still got to talk to, I don't think the office knew yet. Did they? No, okay. So, he's got two bosses. But that's the short of it, I guess. Anything else I should have added there, Tim?
No, I think that covered it. From my perspective, we've got a lot of things going. I certainly enjoy getting to know you all professionally and personally a bit, and I hope I'm kind of pledged to help Shelley make sure that we can kind of keep things going, because I think there's a lot of momentum going on a lot of different fronts. So I want to see that good things happen.
And that was the first ask for both Tim and Shelley, actually. Do we just want to, I don't mean it in this sense, but tread water until we get our plan hired? I said, no, we're going to keep moving forward.
Right.
That's been my mantra for everything, we keep moving forward, to the extent we can. So, and I think, again, I was very impressed with Shelley, and I know Tim will do a great job with the handoff and still be available. So, I mean, he's not going anywhere. So, as far as like Bill moving to another state, Bill does it.
We see come back every other month.
I'm going to get back in February or March for our town advance. No.
He's driving to Michigan Thursday night.
Who, Bill Nelson?
Yeah.
Closes his house.
I wasn't joking.
Really?
He's gone. He's a reverse snowbird, so.
All right, very good.
Okay.
Was there anything else for Mayor? No? Did you have anything else you wanted to cover?
I just want to tie you up and give you one opportunity to raindrop. Yeah, I give him an opportunity. Gotta get back home, so.
All right.
And, there was, I know Chuck mentioned it, I mean, you probably have seen there's a third Wednesday night meeting of the NCDOT folks will be here to kind of give us an overview of 485 and 74, or whatever's on their mind, what's going on. They're doing a lot more public outreach, and all I can say is about time, because there are things that happen and we don't even know they're happening in our town. I mean, at times. So that's good. I'm trying to foster the relationship as well. I'm having good conversations with a few folks. Are we going to get the world? No. There's only so much money to go around. So I'm not promising anything. I'm not promising a chicken in every pot or whatever the politicians like this.
Have you heard any new development of the shopping center here?
This? Yeah. I haven't heard anything more from them. I met with them, I thought I mentioned this last time, if I didn't, I'm sorry. February, maybe? I want to say February. I went up to their office uptown, and we sat down, we had a good conversation. I have seen the communication again improve, but they are still not ready to pull the trigger. And I got saying, hey, look, the density that we have now is denser rooftop-wise than it was when you guys signed up for this property. So I don't understand the logic. I do understand brick and mortar stores are fighting a battle. The state actually talking about the state, actually Supreme Court, now I'm talking about it, just made a ruling that internet sites are gonna have to start collecting local sales tax, apparently, so, yep. Some of them, unless they had a presence in the state, if they had a presence in the state, they had to charge it in the past. If they didn't have a presence in the state, then no sales tax. Well, now it's come back. Oh, it was a 5-4 vote, so we'll see. Little things I pick up here and there, but just kind of shows you things change, to your point. We'll see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Drive safe.
Yeah, I got the cut through now, so I don't have to try and.
All right, next agenda item is text amendment for determination of person. Mr. Goss?
Right, last meeting, we talked about the definition of parcel. Specific, the section 402.5 is, you recall, is the section of the subdivision ordinance that kind of limits what that, the size of the parcel is, that when you start calculating lot density and the lot yield. And this was a discussion at the council level about adding one of the limitations where there was wetland, or excuse me, streams or stream buffers, yes. So I added that wording, and we talked about it last time, and so I just had that before you, and if you are okay with this, you can go ahead and just make a formal recommendation of this to take this up to council. Otherwise, be glad to address any questions or help with any discussion you might have. The additional material I submitted is actually the ordinance wording for your consideration.
Basically just adds the stream.
Okay. Any thoughts? No?
Only the recommendation to pass it on to council.
Yeah, do you need a motion for this or just a recommendation?
Well, motion.
Motion.
There would
Make a
be
motion.
for recommendation.
Recommend to approve it in this,
All right, I'll second.
All right, all in favor? Very good. And do we need a statement of consistency on this? This is not a zoning ordinance?
Council does because they're making the decision, but you're just writing the recommendation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you. Okay, very good.
The next item is dealing with the land use plan amendment process. And recall at last meeting, we kind of went through some of those specific points, and I tried to summarize that in the memo that's attached. Let me just under the minutes, or these are my notes from the May 28th planning board meeting. Tried to summarize that discussion, and I just wanted to first of all check to see if this jives with your memory of the discussion, and or if there's any other comments or questions. I guess the next action that would be appropriate would be for you to request staff to pull it together to a more formal form, like a memo that you would then recommend to the council.
I think that sounds good. Yes, we should do that. Ask staff to move forward with the formal documentation for this amendment process.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes? All right, I think so.
Thank you.
Okay.
Item 8 is a follow-up action to an action by the council taken at its April 9th meeting, there are two voluntary annexations on the agenda. 3901 Voltaire Drive and 419 Hunters Point Drive. The Winding Creek subdivision is zoned RUC and the other is R40. We also have the future land use residential, which is low density residential in both cases. And you might recall that under state law that whenever annexation occurs, the existing zoning expires within a certain time period, not 60 days from the effective date of the annexation. So this is an attempt to make sure that new zoning is in place rather than having properties with no zoning limitations or restrictions.
Do we need a motion to apply the zoning?
I'll make a motion.
Second that.
All right, discussion. The RUC, I think we talked about trying to limit the RUC when we could. You know, all this discussion around RUC zoning, here we're applying it again. Do we know the lot size of that 3901 Voltaire Drive?
I know it's within a subdivision that is predominantly RUC. zoning.
That's what we're trying to keep it consistent.
Yeah.
One lot RC and another R40.
Yeah. How do you guys feel about that?
I think it's okay if it's surrounding, it's not already seen.
It's true. So what that means, once again, this comes up every time we talk about RUC, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. What that means is if they want to put in a swimming pool, if the house burns down and want to rebuild it, it's under the ordinance of the same as the county has, right? That's what RUC means.
No,
So do we have an ordinance for
Doesn't-
RUC? You know, can they put in a swimming pool, for instance?
It just means you honor their original setbacks, which we honor anyway under R40.
And this would be, so their setbacks, all their codes would be what it is now before they.
Just setbacks. right?
Just setback.
That's it.
That's all RUC stands is.
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of make sure that they're not penalized in case they want to do some type of accessory structures later on. That's things. And I think when RUC was established, one of the main objectives was to avoid non-conforming situations and kind of prevent property owners from not being able to utilize their property.
So it's just the setbacks which would fall under the previous, everything else is the same as R40?
Yeah, well, I think the ordinance reads that RUC, the setbacks are according to the approved plat. So that's where the real reference is made. So that's kind of the governing document, and there's no established setbacks, stated in the zoning boards, unlike other zoning districts.
Okay. Do you know from these landowners or property owners if they have any issues with the zoning? Or are you seeing R40 or have you heard anything different?
I've not had any communication with them.
Okay.
I'm assuming they submitted, they submitted the voluntary annexation.
Right, I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, I didn't speak with them, so.
Again, because I've heard historically, Wesley Chapel assigning zoning, and then later on those landowners go, I didn't know how I got the zoning. So I just want to make sure we don't continue down that pathway.
They get notified,
They
there's
do.
signs in their yards.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, unanimous.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The next, item 9, is a text amendment for permitting construction trailers, and I'm going to ask that we continue this. I put this together initially in response to what I understood was a problem with the way the ordinance treated just construction trailers. As I reread it in preparation for this evening, I know that, and I think talking a little bit with Cheryl, after I submitted the materials, there's issues not only with, there's office trailers, there's construction trailers, and there's sales trailers. And I think there was a little bit of tweaking I could help make this a little more clear in terms of defining these terms, and making sure that there's consistency in how they're treated. In a nutshell, the problem was that a construction trailer is treated both as a temporary use, as a pretty simple process where you come in, you're building something, of course you have an office there, but then it's also in the permitted use table, it's treated as a use that requires a conditional use permit. So quite a different animal. So that was the reason for the text amendment, to try to clarify that. But in looking at these terms that are used, I think if I wait another month, that'd be better. And I'll talk to Shelley, the new planner, and make sure that she's aware of this. And if that's amenable, I'll go ahead and suggest that we just continue that one.
Sounds fine with you guys?
Yep. I'll do it.
Table for more research.
Because you know, sometimes those sales trailers stay around for 5-6 years.
Yeah. All right, number 10, other business.
Yeah, the other business is really kind of continuing discussion. We've had the first two items dealing with preventing clear cutting and the retention of existing vegetation. I had, in looking at my notes from last meeting, I had submitted, I'd asked the village attorney to affirm that statute that Member Bledsoe had shared with us was something that was applicable to this particular situation. And I understand the attorney's been on vacation, so I haven't had a chance to catch up with him. So I don't have anything new to report on the first bullet. On the second one, I guess I would just ask if, I'll turn it over to Ms. Bledsoe if you had any other items to give the board an update on.
Yes.
Okay?
Are you kidding? All right. I'd like to update you on 3 things as far as the tree ordinances. I have the status of the ordinance of what Dr. Ellis and I are working on, an input from an outside source, a developer that I spoke with, and an update. What I'd like to do is just to pass out the clear cutting ordinance that we have been, so that you'll know what we're talking about. This is what I'd like to see us incorporate, and Tim and I have talked about this. I'm passing on down. This is just, whether or not we can do. This is just, what I would like to be considered adding into it until we can get things. So that's what, hopefully the attorney is looking at or considering or whatever. As I've said in the past, the village tree ordinance is in 3 areas, predominantly Article 4 and the subdivision ordinance. I'm going to just rant on while you guys are looking at that, if you don't mind. It's also in the Section 4.2 of screening and landscaping and the zoning ordinance, and it's mentioned briefly in the land use plan. And I've pulled out those, and these are just my copies, but I'm going to pass them down so you can look at them to see. These are all the tree ordinances that are mentioned that I've pulled out and just put together, and you can share them. There's no changes in this. All this is just pulling out every instance, and if you'll notice on the second part of that, that's the zoning, subdivision ordinance, zoning ordinance, and the very last page is the mention of it on the planning, the future land use plan. This is the part that Dr. Ellis and I, when we discussed, we were pulling all references into this section. One of the things we wanted is table of contents, definition of terms like, for example, drip line. You guys might know what drip line is, but I've never seen that. And caliper. The caliper, the measurement of the. So these are some, we want to have like a definitions in terms. And we want to pull the tree ordinance section to a separate section by itself. And then finally, a statement of purpose. And we're continuing to review other town ordinances and doing comparisons, but we don't have any rewrite proposals yet. Item 2, I spoke with Travis Manning. As many of you, he's a land manager with Culture Land Partners, and he's given me some insight from a developer's point of view of what he'd like to see our tree ordinance say. He suggested eliminating softwoods like pine trees and just survey the hardwoods. He said another option is if we have a site over 20 acres, instead of requiring tree survey of all 20 acres, choose 2 sample sites, say a section 200 by 200, for example. Then you can have staff identify which sections would be surveyed so that they don't have to survey the entire site. And I had some questions about this, but he said he didn't know the answer. He was going to have to talk with one of his staff members, a Chris Falk, who actually did the tree survey. Because my concern was, okay, if you're only surveying certain sections, well, how do you know what else? So that confused me.
Yeah, you don't, because
Yeah.
like, depending on the topography, you're gonna get different things growing on different sides of hills.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it can be accurate.
I don't either, but anyway, I wanted him to, again, I want to bring his feedback to the board. And he also said he would like to, given Wesley Chapel soil condition, he'd like us to consider lowering the mitigation numbers, obviously, and the tree caliper by 1 inch. He said this would allow the trees to be built closer together, and he believes that lowering the tree caliper, or the dimension of it, would increase the survival rate of the trees. I've already spoken, you've heard Forrester Will Smith, and you've also heard Will Ortez. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all their comments together and sort of pass them out next month to the board, so you can look at them
Right.
and see, kind of put them in perspective. And I'm also waiting to hear back from him on those questions I had about his suggestion about doing just specific areas instead of a whole piece of it. That's it.
Very good, Deb.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you. We're working hard.
I do like the idea of lowering the
I'm sorry. Caliper?
the tree density of the stem, the trunk of the, because it's easier for the 2-inch trees to live than the other one.
Yes.
And with the soil layers, we mostly have bull tile around here. That's the other part. It's very hard to grow with that.
Then it was obviously a good suggestion.
They do seem to agree.
So that's it. Do you have any questions?
Do you need this back?
Just, yeah, that's fine. I don't have to have them back, but all this is the ordinances that we already have. That's it, yeah. Okay, thank you.
I'd suggest if you are able to summarize those comments, if you can get those into Cheryl, the Monday, 2 weeks prior to your next meeting. That way we can send everything out to the council head or the board head in the packet. Is that possible?
So the comments that I got from the different folks, put them together, give her so she can present to council?
No.
No,
You suggest you were going to kind of summarize comments and
Yes.
present to the board next month?
Yes.
If you get those to us 2 weeks before the board meeting, we can just kind of circulate those ahead of time.
Okay.
As part of the regular packet materials.
Those comments?
Yeah, I've got that. Okay.
Very good. I think you just saved us, an hour of interviews here with all of us, with Ortiz, Travis. Thank you. All right, next thing is text amendment for sign. Is that right? Yep, text amendment for sign, zoning ordinance, Article 8.
I have nothing to report. I have not gotten any comments back from the attorney. You recall that I drafted an ordinance based upon some questions based upon the Supreme Court decision, and just have not had a chance to check in with the attorney.
Okay. All right, and planning board rules and procedures.
We had, you might recall that the council had asked, they looked at their own rules and procedures recently, and so they had wanted to make sure that that they were sensitive to any comments from the planning board or amendments that you may want to make with regard to your own rules of procedure. So we had circulated that last month, I believe, and we had a lot of discussion items last month, and so we kind of continued this item to see if there might be any other comments that you all might have had. So that's the reason it's on the agenda again.
Oh, okay.
So if there's any comments, we're glad to record them. If not, we'll just kind of send this on to the council.
Anyone? No? Okay.
Well, I guess if there's any response from the planning board, and if there's no comments, we'll just say there's no comments.
Right, no comments.
No comments, okay, thank you.
All right. And then other business, number 11, planning staff report between June 11th village council meeting.
Yeah, the main item dealing with the planning board was the continued discussion of the conservation subdivision. You might recall when Bill had prepared some materials where he outlined some of the different recommendations between the original, your recommended version and what at one point the council had. So I think there were about half a dozen of those items. So they reached a resolution on just about all of them. And there was also a discussion about a couple follow-up questions on the view shed, which is that area along the thoroughfare. If it was not, how do we treat that if there was not existing canopy in that area? How do you make sure that that view shed is like an opaque buffering from the roadway? I think and so we made a suggestion about how to do that. So you heard the mayor say that there's a good chance that they'll go ahead and call for a public hearing at the next meeting. Presumably that would take place in August, and unless there's an unforeseen circumstances that they could take action in August.
So is there anything else that's come up that you anticipate might be on our next planning board meeting that you've heard of, or that didn't make it to this one? Or?
We have a formal request for preliminary plat that's been submitted. I don't think it's going to be ready for your July meeting. By the time we circulate and get comments back from other agencies.
You can please communicate to Shelley as well, right? Anytime we get subdivision plots, we're looking at everything done, the check sheet, which we haven't really seen yet, right? We're looking at
Correct.
So the next one's gonna be that.
Yeah, I just talked to her about that very thing this morning because she is going to be doing pretty much the entire review of this one that's been submitted. And I think that's a strong point that she has. She's done a lot of plan review, both preliminary plats, final plats, regular site plans, business projects, and that. So she should be really conversant in that. And of course has worked here in Union County, so she knows a lot of the folks over at Union County and departments. So
Great.
she should have not as steep a learning curve as I did.
All right, and the other thing I have is just going back and over my notes here from tonight. Right, we passed a couple motions to go to council. Should we fill out that sheet that we spoke about, right, where we put in the notes and?
Certainly could.
Yep, because it was like, if I remember right, number 6, right, determination of parcel with streams. That was something we approved. I don't know what else we put on there, but, we're saying this on to be passed because we think it should be an ordinance. And then number 6, right, apply zoning to those 2 lots. Is there anything else that we might want to fill out that form for? Okay.
Because they've already taken care of conservation subdivision, they already took care of that. We have no other information about our other business, and nothing to talk about construction trailers. That's it.
Right, nothing else we're passing on to them as a vote. All right.
But I think we all understand here now, when conservation subdivision comes through, you will no longer be here, Tim, you'll have another quieter, nicer job somewhere else. That we will get bombarded, well, not bombarded, there'll be multiple applications coming in for conservation subdivisions. And then we'll have the issues with the trees, the stormwater, and whatever else will come along. If you've been, I know Chuck lives right next to Heritage, right? Heritage.
Mhm.
They've already paved the roads and put in the curb cutouts, and they're going into the back of it. Go look at that road while it's under construction and see it's not as big as it appears to be when you look at it on the map. When you go down to Cupperson, if you wish to drive through, you'll see the retaining walls and how they pertain to the topography of that land and where they put the railings. And once again, those streets, when they do the curb cutouts, you feel the scope is, there's not that much room there when you look at it. Obviously the trees and the grass. They haven't started this one, but when we look at conservation subdivisions, there's not many around in our area that meet the newer criteria, right? So the newer criteria is gonna be, there'll be no more mailboxes, because the post office won't allow you to put a mailbox there anymore. So you'll have the mail clusters where they have to park the cars, and the different types of utilities that they're putting in now, they're setting them back off differently, because that's what the utility companies wrote into their law. There's not a tree standing in a lot of these places, because they had to clear them for whatever reason. And then when you drive down, we'll just pick the Heritage, you'll drive down and see where the Rutledge's property is, how they're trying to build around and work around that as best they can with the property already there. You'll get a good layout of it. And then you'll see the actual density of those patio homes from the backyard, the back of the building to the fence line. This would be a very big yard there. It's honestly, it's not from this to that table. That's really, when you actually see it. They're nice homes, they're nice homes. I think the issue is that we're going to see more of is the conservation subdivision, because they'll want to change it and cluster the homes and leave greater space. If you look at older neighborhoods here in Union County, Meriwether would be an example, or Brook Valley or something like that, where they clustered all the homes together, that was under the county, and they'd leave big parcels in the back because of the topography of the land. Well, you'll pick one subdivision, we'll just call it A, and then B will butt against it when they sell the land, and then you'll have these basically landlocked pockets of land where there'll be no trails in there, there'll be not even an access road to get in a fire truck, because you'll have to technically drive across someone's property. That's what I'm looking at.
Are you saying that the roads, like at Heritage, are not as wide as what they were on the plan?
Oh, no, when you look at it, it's 12 feet, but just look at the cutout. When we were talking the whole thing about the lane, and then the curb is the curb. You know, they'll raise it another 2 inches for the asphalt. But that's the turning radius, that's what I'm trying to say. The turning radius coming in, and when they made the island in the middle and the little cut through, that's the turning radius. So when they talk about 10 feet, 12 feet, or just giving us that extra foot, you can see the difference of what they started with. Remember, it was, the state says 12. And did anybody pay attention the other day on Buell Church Road? When you go towards 16? Right? You notice what they had to do there, right? The road was short. So they had to expand it, because if they didn't expand the road to the true dimension of 12 feet, when they do these roundabouts, all the vehicles would drive off the road, the bigger vehicles, and rip up that asphalt as they go along. So when they say they're 12 feet, that road's been there, what, 25 plus more years? It wasn't ever a true 12. So when we ask for these things, it's when Tim was saying, someone has to go out and check it, or like the light poles and this, I'll be meeting that. Because once they build it, I mean, the sign looks beautiful in some of these places, but they'll say, sorry, I'll move on, right? So,
Speaking of that, have we gotten a report yet from EPCON on the age?
That's October.
Is that October? I know the first.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
curious what that is. Yeah, right.
Yes,
It's selling
sir.
or they're filling
That
up?
moved in, people moved in.
I'm wondering what that report's gonna be, you know, what the percentage is.
They haven't really made that, they won't make that curb cut out, I guess, until they get a certain population density there.
What?
Remember we were gonna ask for the
On Cuthbertson?
road medium there?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that. That was for the turning.
That should be on Cuthbertson. You'd think that would be there before the first home had certificate.
I'd have to get back to plans and look. Remember, we had the discussion about the shadowing going in and the turning radius of them coming out?
I don't know, maybe you weren't here?
Oh, no, you weren't here, I'm sorry.
Did we end up,
I thought, some of that got
something
approved.
happened.
I
There's
know there was
a
one for heritage that
No, this is for
Heritage-
you had recommended and DOT said they were not gonna do. But I'm not
Correct.
sure the one.
And then there was one going to be on Cumberson Road, the same thing, that, I remember we talked about the concrete medium or the part of the turning lane coming out and we wanted it wider.
Well, maybe we need to do research, go back and look and see what was approved and double check, because, but that's going in, there shouldn't be any limit. You'd think before the first one was built.
Maybe something can do later.
Maybe they don't wanna do it, save money.
There you go.
Well,
Stick it to the
any type of
village.
road approval would be, you'd have to get approval from NCDOT.
Yes, I don't know.
Either approval, even construct, and then DOT would approve
Well,
the dimensions and.
well, I'll give you an example. Do we all know where Five Stone Church is?
Yep.
Okay. Five Stone Church is supposed to have a blinking light that says there's a church. The blinking light is there, but Champion Forest, who's part of us, Champion Forest, their HOA wants to put an ornamental pole and put that light up there. They don't want the standard steel pole that the state would put up to get it working. So they wanted their own pole to match their community before they put that, be careful, church people coming out on Sundays.
Look out for Christians.
You're right, has nothing to do with the Village of Wesley Chapel, but the HOA and DOT came together and they want to put a warning sign, traffic warning sign in.
Hey, Tim, let me ask you a question about that, where we were promised that we were gonna get a lane on the subdivision, and then they came back and said, DOT won't approve it. Can we as a village demand that they do those improvements?
I don't believe so. We don't have any road standards, we don't have personnel to enforce it. We've kind of basically said, DOT, you're our road guys.
Well, they're terrible guys. I'm sorry, they just really, and I've said this 400 times, they really don't know what they're doing.
Well, and I would say, if you don't like DOT, then the town could hire their own staff and staff up to do the road engineering and road maintenance in town. That would be the alternative.
It would be very costly.
Right. Yeah, and I'm not trying to make excuses.
No, that's okay, we don't
That'd
need to
be
talk
the-
about that.
Yeah.
All right, any other discussion at all? I get a motion for adjournment?
No motion.
I'll make a motion.
Mike,
I'll
I get a
second.
second? All in favor? All right, thank you, everyone.
Have you seen the U-turns going on in the country?
I heard about it, why can't we?
Oh, my goodness.
So,